Hello there. Greetings. My face is still sunburned, man. Woo-wee. Put some coconut oil on it. Yeah. Makes me smell like a biscuit. Just kidding. I look like a biscuit, right? What if? Here's a great question. What if? I want to keep this extremely concise and simple. Because I know, and unfortunately I went to public school, but the difference with me being is I never believed my teachers. I know they were full of it, as well as everybody in college. Yes, I did go to college. I know these people were completely full of it. Those who can't teach, right? Teachers are, if you're a teacher, sorry, but teachers are the quintessence of foolishness. They really are. They don't understand anything. They want you to go home and regurgitate garbage, lies, filth, and propaganda that are found in your textbooks. And none of the textbooks I had in high school or college were any good. I went to the library and I went to the wisest masters who were, and I consumed. And consumption, i.e. episteme, empirical knowledge, is not important. On live stream, people say, oh, you're so smart. It's like, I don't care about intelligence. Intelligence is great. It'll help you out in a lot of things in life. But it's not wisdom. This is the reason why the smartest people on earth do the dumbest things, like stick their fingers in light sockets and it's like, man, he's so smart. Why did he do something so dumb? It's because these people don't understand how the universe works. Their heads are full of facts, but they can't use it to synthesize things. It's like giving a highly intelligent person all the DeWalt tools ever made. Hammers, power grinders, power nailers, miter saws, and I've got a lot of DeWalt tools myself. He's like, build a house. It's like, I'm really smart, they don't know how to do anything. You give them the tools, they don't know what to do with it. What if, because all these fool teachers, just go over this one little bit more here before getting to the core of it. These fool teachers have buried and convoluted the mechanics of Mother Nature. And it's not like they're actively doing that, they're wringing their hands, but, innocently, and innocence is no different than ignorance. Innocent baby is, of course, a super ignorant child. Evil is not to do evil. Evil is the love of evil, by the way. Ignorant people do evil things, like, oh my God, that's so horrible. But they just don't know any better. True evil is, of course, to be in love with evil. You know the difference between the two. But they've hidden and convoluted the mechanics of Mother Nature to hold control over you, your mind, your work efforts. And, they've fed us, me, you, garbage. I grew up watching these foolish shows like How the Universe Works, or, so-and-so, PhD bada bing talking about quantum mechanics. I knew all this stuff was garbage. Fundamentally, Mother Nature could never, ever work that way. It's completely antithetical to wisdom, logic. It's antithetical to common sense. It's a violation. It is a heinous violation against Occam's razor. The universe could never, ever work that way. What if the origin of suffering, and I don't mean physical suffering, because all embodied beings, which are consubstantial constructs of matter and spirit, I'm talking about the perpetuation of misery and suffering. Because, by the way, and I've said this before in countless videos, there has never been any guru that was free of physical suffering. It's completely impossible. For the born, there is no escape from pain, suffering, and death. There's obviously no escape from. There is transcendence, but for physical beings with a nervous system, there is no escape of that. There is transcendence, being able to see beyond it, not being bound to it. But what if the origins of suffering, fundamental suffering, because there's different levels of suffering. There's nervous system suffering, and then there's the suffering due to primordial ignorance that fuels this objectification. What if, and it is the case, that the universe is so simple, and yet people are so blind that they cannot see the nature of their own materialism. Because the most repeated phrase in ancient Pali, for example, is isakaya namisota, also to namarupa anatate. The psychophysical is not the soul. This neti methodology, this is not it, that's not. We're all suffering from primordial objectification. We see ourselves, You know, our little Tesla doll here. As a psychophysical creature, we, you know, go and brush our teeth, look in the mirror, and we think we are that we look at in the mirror. And that's not the case. Neti neti is not like a philosophical belief or conviction or something. It is also, too, a methodology. And there could not be anything in this universe more simple than that. It's not like you're going to sit there and, you know, talk about something of deep philosophical importance with your friends, and or even amongst your, even inside of your own head, you know, ruminate over the nature of suffering and talk about apoptoticism to the via negativa. It is also, too, the method. It's not like some sort of philosophical precept uttered by the lips of Pythagoras or Plato or Indian gurus. It is the method. Back in the days where living to be 40 meant you were a really, really old man in most cases. You know, life was really fraught with danger. You know, if you got bit by a poisonous snake, you know, there ain't no anti-venom for you. It is over with. It's over with. There's a million things that you're going to perish from in life. You know, nature is infinitely on another level. What if? And this is the case. Nature is infinitely more simple than what this, what I call the cult of bumping particles, has told you. Quantum, relativity. I have, you know, Feynman books out the wazoo, all these books from earlier life, and I want to understand the mechanics of the nature of the universe. I never bought into that garbage. I knew that light, so-called speed of light, was ridiculous. The nature of light is ridiculous. If someone told me when I was a really young person that light is not an emission, you know, that just superficially sounds so ludicrous. Nothing emits light. Whoa, what are you smoking? Well, that's just crazy. It's like, let's just examine it very, very simply here. Nothing emits sound. Sound is not an emission, it's a disturbance in the medium. So-called speed of sound is the rate of induction at which the disturbance can occur. Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever fell fast onto water. You could sit there and you could, you know, drop your hand through water, but if you rear back and you go really fast and smack the water, it's like smacking a brick wall. Have you ever done that? That would be like the hysteresis of water. So the so-called speed of light, or what conventionally is called c, is the hysteresis of light. It's the maximum rate of induction at which the coaxial circuit of light can occur. In other words, that's the point at which you can actually pass, a disturbance can occur of the ether, because there's no light in the ether. Light is of the ether itself, just like ice floating in the water. It's like, well, there's ice in the water. And they say, no, that ice is the water. That ice is just a modality of the water itself. So there's an iceberg in the water and it hit the Titanic. It's like, well, oh, that's true, but it was just a frozen version of the field. And that's what matter is. Matter is, I've called matter hard light. Ultra high energy light is matter. We could call it frozen light. It would be the same thing. Say matter is the ice of the ether. Accurate. And all atoms, of course, i.e. elements, are compounds of hydrogen, which is, of course, 100% undeniable. This makes Mother Nature really, really simple. What this means is, instead of filling people's heads with garbage, poppycock, nonsense, twaddle, hooey, and flim-flam, we could, if someone actually understood it, teach a young person in less than a week, far less than a week, all the fundamental secrets of nature. If they were really intelligent, you could teach it to them in a few hours. You could stick the entire formula for the entire universe on a single card, like a double-sided card. By the way, I was challenged that I wouldn't be able to create that card, but I did create it. It's called the Aurora Sapientia, and its link for that is in the description below. Yeah, I created that like last year, maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember. I created that already. You can stick the entire universe on a little card like this, double-sided. That's something. Takes the place of thousands and thousands and thousands of books full of lies, nonsense, which convolute you. This is the reason why kids hate school. They get all the spark, the desire for the awe of nature. It's just like gets zapped out of them. It does. It just gets totally zapped out of them. What if wisdom and liberation were as simple as understanding, like as I said before, the methodology of this via negativa? Because there's no distinction from all aspects of metaphysics between wisdom and the self. Wisdom, of course, brings about self-proximity, which is actualization. The transcendent self and wisdom are not different. Wisdom is just a way of speaking of self-proximity. Yeah? That would be making, what's the opposite of diluted? Answer the question. What's the opposite of diluted? I know you know the answer. What's the opposite of diluted? Like you take a giant jug of water, you stick in some like bright red food dye in it, and it's like, oh, you can see it. It's kind of beautiful, but after a few seconds, it vanishes. It gets diluted. What's the opposite of dilution? What's the reason or cause for that original dilution? Well, it's no cause at all. It's primordial agnosis. There's no different than saying illumination relational to light. Yeah? You know something else that's the opposite of diluted? Another way of speaking about that is point source. As I said in a prior video, there's no distinction between a laser and a magnet, except one is a field point source and the other one is spatially filtered, and then it is monochromatically filtered, i.e. a frequency filter. Because a laser is nothing other than a light magnet. Because what defines a magnet, as I've said, and undeniable, is not a quantitative object, rather a qualitative object. That is what comprises a magnet. It is a point source object. What defines any and all lasers, whether they be chemical lasers, gas tube lasers, LED lasers, is that they're point source objects. That's why LED lasers are so darn efficient. This means you could draw an analogy between absolute liberation, a laser, and a magnet. And then people could, if they understand what a magnet is, they understand what a laser is, it's like, wow, that makes it really simple. Therefore, understanding the methodology of liberation transcendence, this apophatic methodology, this THEURGY, this via negativa, becomes abundantly simple. What's the opposite of dilution? That would be concentration. But not concentration empirically, like, focusing your brain, trying to burn the wood between your ears. Concentration meaning via negativa, disobjectification. Man, oh man, it can't get any simpler than that, and yet it confuses the hell out of people. They're like, what do you mean by disobjectification? It's like, what would disobjectification mean? Because there's no signal in the radio, there's no fireplace inside this iMac. Yeah. You think yourself as that thing you see in the mirror when you brush your teeth, like, that's me, that's who I am. I'm 5'10", and I'm 45 years old, blah, blah, blah. I'm 49. I have a little Tesla doll. A person made for me. Doesn't that make life so simple? It makes understanding cosmic mechanics simple. It makes understanding fields simple. What if, and it's not what if, it is to be sure, the entire universe is a simple binary conjugate of fields, the magnetic and the dielectric. And magnetism, even more simply, is a dielectric field. The magnetic field is toroidal, the dielectric field is a hyperboloid. Together, these form the conjugate geometry of the entire universe. So-called gravity is dielectric acceleration, so-called electricity is the hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Light is a compound coaxial circuit. I made a diagram a few days ago showing you the simplicity of fields, or simplex high energy fields, compound lower energy fields, and then the conjugate geometry of the universe between the magnetic and the dielectric. Gee, that makes it really simple. Wisdom, methodology of liberation, the nature of fields, the nature of the universe, all is abundantly simple. But you have to have a primer. All of these things ultimately are nothing other than pressure mediations. Yes? And how we deal with them. Do we identify with them? Because everything is the identification phenomenology. False identification phenomenology. We think we are that thing we see in the mirror. Primordial agnosis. We're trying to prop up a sandcastle on the shores of the beach. It's never going to happen. This is the reason why people suffer. This is the reason why these rich, miserable fools with all the money in the world and all the beautiful looks in the world and all the Ferraris and Lamborghinis, they're so miserable. They just got to tell everybody how miserable their lives are. It's like, oh, you're a mega millionaire with like a dozen homes and, you're very beautiful and, oh, but you're so miserable. Because there's only one ultimate peace. You have all the money in the world, all this materialism doesn't feed the soul. Materialism can never feed the soul. A poor kid with a Matchbox toy is way happier, generally, than a billionaire is. You see a kid sitting there in a diaper, playing with this Matchbox toy that he might have pulled out of the garbage on his dirty floor of his hut. That kid's way happier than a billionaire, generally speaking. Natura naturans, nature and understanding. You have to have a primer of this universe. If you have a primer of understanding, you could understand people's motives, understand people's impulses, you understand the universe, you understand what fields are and what they are not, you understand light, you understand what suffering is, true suffering, yeah? Not physical suffering for which there is no escape, for the consubstantiality between matter and spirit that makes a living being. There's no escape from that. There's not. No form of metaphysics ever talked about that. I'm talking about true suffering, which is perpetuated, false identity, bemoaning your condition, bemoaning your illness, bemoaning old age, blah, blah, blah. It's like you're suffering from primordial agnosis and identifying with that thing. To be transcendent, to be yet still alive, yet at the same time transcendent, or the so-called dead man walking, is something that requires the opposite of dilution. I don't like the word concentration, because as soon as you say concentration, you think of somebody burning incense, sitting there crushing their mind. They're trying to escape a thinking prison by thinking. I'm going to think my way out of a thinking prison. It's not how it works. It can't work that way. I just wrote an article about that. It's a really good article. I'm not saying that just because I wrote it. It's really good. The link is below. There is no what if. That necessitatively is how the universe is, how it works, and by having a primer of all of this, which I did put, the link is below, on a two-sided card, which I've printed out myself. I should have brought one out here. Two-sided card about that big. You have everything. The entire primer of the entire universe. No one else has done that before. I did it. Because the universe necessitatively is that simple. You have to be able to see the forest for the trees. If you understand the primer of the universe, everything else is minutia. Everything is pressure mediation, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Everything is capacitance, resistance, permeability, permittivity. Everything is primordial agnosis, or the removal thereof. Understanding fields becomes really, really simple. It is all irreducibly simple. Yet people have not been taught it, they can't see it, they don't care about it. There are many reasons. They're too busy bemoaning their suffering and their money, lack of money, their age. People are just caught up in 10 million varieties of BS and nonsense. That's not important to me now. I gotta worry about the bills. Well, I have a lot of bills too, but all that stuff that you take for granted in life, I sacrificed and didn't have to understand these things. All your friends and your girlfriends and your free time to party or whatever the hell it is normal people do. I sacrificed all of that for that understanding. Was it worth it? The answer is yes. No one else is willing to make that kind of sacrifice. Seemingly so. Not these days anyway. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. I enjoy reading every comment, even the bad comments. People are so mean. Meow, I hate you. You're fat, bald, and ugly. Meow. I don't care. Oh, Lordy. Lux e veritas. Have a lovely weekend. What little there is of it left. Thank you, and good night.